Hi there, and welcome to the February or late winter garden tour, which is just a little trip round the garden with me and my mobile phone. And it's today because today is the first day for a long time that it hasn't rained. The British climate is considered to be rainy, but it really isn't. Our average rainfall here in the southeast of England is pretty much the same as Melbourne in Australia, which is definitely not a rainy place. However, we do seem to have very irregular rainfall, and we have something like 6 to 9 week droughts in the summer quite regularly these days, and such wet winters. We actually had a hosepipe ban until 2 weeks ago, if you can imagine, and yet it was raining every day. In terms of the temperature, our winters are generally quite mild, and we rarely go below -6 Celsius, 21 Fahrenheit. But this winter, we've had very few frosts, maybe half a dozen, and most of the time the temperatures have been just a few degrees above freezing. But it has rained, and of course there are a lot of plants that can cope with the cold, but not if their roots are sitting in soggy, wet soil. So let's see. Now here, I'm starting here this time because it's such a joy to see the snowdrops. The UK is the major country for snowdrops. I think we have something like about 80% of all the snowdrops in the world. Of course, outside the house we have a terrace, which looks as all terraces do in late winter. A dead Christmas tree waiting to be chopped up, things at an angle, piles of wood. Let's move on. It's not very beautiful. So we go up these steps and onto what we call the parterre. On this left-hand side is a north-facing wall. It's got a wall, it's got trees, it's very shady. The main thing we've done to create a bit more light is to raise the canopy of the trees, to cut one tree down and it grew up again. It became multi-stemmed. We cut it down, it became even more multi-stemmed. It's quite nice now, actually. And we've taken its lower branches out. And then this other tree, which is a conifer, we have simply raised the canopy quite high. Things looking pretty in the shade in late winter include these lovely cyclamen leaves, as well as this, which is lamium, dead nettle. And these just self-seed themselves around the garden, and I think they really are very pretty. In September, those cyclamen will be little white flowers, and there are also a few snowdrops. This is right directly under the canopy of the fir tree, so there's very little light, but a few snowdrops are surviving, and as I say, the cyclamen and the lamium very happy. Between the lower lawn and the upper lawn there's a set of steps, and on the right hand side of the parterre we have the main sunny border, which is really where I try to put most of my colour. We can see it from the kitchen window. It's really where most of the sort of serious gardening, insofar as I do serious gardening, goes. So let's have a look at this. I had left most of the grasses and seed heads over the winter, and we've been cutting them down. For example, that's Nepeta. As soon as the little green leaves started to appear underneath, I asked Felix to cut that right down. Felix helps me in the garden. There is quite a lot of self-seeded euphorbia. I'm not cutting the grasses down yet, but I think that that will come in the next week or so. I've still kept these long, tall spikes of verbascum because I love them, but quite frankly, they should go pretty soon. Self-seeded primroses, and also violets. Here is a clump of chrysanthemum burnt orange, and as you can see, it's trying to take over the world. I think next year we'll probably dig a few clumps up and maybe give them away, because it is a lovely, lovely flower, and it's the last one to flower at the end of the year. Further down here, that is the beginnings of the sedum, or rather the Hylotelephium, coming up. We cut those seed heads back once we could see the green underneath. And the flower I'm most keen on at this time of year is the summer snowflake, or leucojum. Leucojum is wonderful against the bark of a silver birch, and it flowers quite early. It's one of the first things to come out around the time snowdrops come out, and the flowers are often still there in April, a couple of months later. One of the joys of this time of year is the areas under deciduous trees. Deciduous trees are trees that drop their leaves in autumn, and they usually don't get that leaf canopy back until quite late in spring, sometimes early summer. And what that means is that plants that need sunlight in the winter and early spring really flourish. So you can see here snowdrops, leucojum. There are more of the cyclamen. And there's an awful lot of self-seeded Smyrnium perfoliatum, or perfoliate Alexanders. Now, this is invasive in the countryside in Britain. I've had it since before it was defined as invasive. But also, I live in a town and there are a lot of streets and houses and places where Smyrnium won't grow before you get to the countryside. We've also got, as a self-seeder, this Cerinthe, which has lovely blue flowers. Once again, very long lasting. It'll come out in flower in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, and that'll go on for a couple of months. Here used to be the veg patch. I've been growing wildflowers there for a couple of years. I'm now going to turn this into a wildlife cottage garden. So I'm slowly planting wildlife-friendly plants in clumps. Felix has thinned out the wildflowers. We are leaving some of them in, some teasels, some oxeye daisies, and also some wild carrot, and possibly a few other things. And Ozzy is just investigating. Yep, nothing there for dogs. And I've added some bronze fennel and some Jecker's thyme and a few other things, and I'll be adding in probably a few dozen more plants into each border. It costs quite a lot to fill up a border, so that's why we're leaving quite a lot of the wildflowers in, so that we don't have to fill the entire border. And of course, you know, more mess over there. Here we've got a little clump of self-seeded. It's the Smyrnium perfoliatum. It's pulmonaria, or lungwort. This is Lychnis coronaria, or red campion, and they're beautiful pink flowers, which last quite a long time in the summer. And once again, that's self-seeded, so it's a good one to have around. Ozzy's sniffing around to see if there's anything of interest to dogs. I'm not sure whether there is. Here I've got a great big rosemary bush, which is basically here for cooking rosemary. And it's never really flowered before, but I'm very hopeful that this year is the year that I'll have a lovely stems of blue flowers, because rosemary is really pretty when it flowers. And once again, it's another early flower. It's good for pollinators. This is our habitat pile. It looks a mess, but I'm quite sure that the insects and wildlife love it. And it's all the stuff we can't really get into the compost heap. I hoped we could create something beautiful like they have at Great Dixter, but actually this will just have to do. And of course in summer we won't notice it because the leaves will be on the bushes. Here's another corner that actually looks better at this time of year than it does later on. It's another shady one. It's got trees which lose their leaves, so it's sunnier now, and a high wall. And what's doing particularly well is the leucojum again. And just coming out there is some Jack Frost brunera. I would love it to be a bit more aggressive. Everyone thinks it goes everywhere, but it hasn't here. This beautiful hellebore is Eric Smithii, moonshine, I think. Now, this is the danger of buying one pretty plant. I should have bought about 5, and it would be a lovely big clump, and every year I keep meaning to add to it, and every year I forget. But it would be lovely to see more than just one flower there, really, wouldn't it? Once again, you can see the cyclamen leaves colonising around the base of the trunk. And we still haven't cut down our seed heads on the phlomis because they're still creating some sort of upright interest, but pretty soon those will have to go. There's the self-seeded verbascum, and I do love their tall spires, so if it's chosen to be here, which is a shady place. This is epimedium. Now, whenever I go to other gardens, I see great clumps of epimedium amber queen with its beautiful yellow flowers. So I plant a clump, and it just doesn't do as well here. This is the last attempt. I planted 3, only 2 survived, only 1 looks healthy. If it really doesn't like it, I'll have to give up. More Smyrnium perfoliatum. You can see why it's called invasive. Coming along here, the hydrangeas look just like sticks. But I was given a tip that said you can check whether something's alive by just scraping it with your fingernail. And can you see? I think In a past time, we would have got rid of the moss on these bricks, and certainly the moss on this bench. The bench is very old, the moss is not doing it any good, and it is going to fall apart fairly soon, but it is old enough that I'm actually happier with the moss than the bench. Moss and fungi are becoming an increasingly important part of the garden, or rather, they always were a very important part of the garden, but we all tried to get rid of them. But now people are realising that just as you need good gut biome, you also need moss and fungi in your gardens to make sure that everything's working properly. It's all part of the cycle of life. In this corner, we've got the bird feeder really near to some evergreen hedging, some rose which keeps its leaves, and a couple of trees and bushes and quite a lot of growth. Now, the thing is about bird feeders is that birds are prey and they can't really fly to a feeder. If you put your feeder in the middle of the garden and they've got to fly too far in an open space, it makes them very vulnerable and they won't do it. So you need to have bird feeders quite close to a bit of shelter so that they can run out, grab something to eat and then fly back again. Euphorbia wolfenii, where would we be without it at this time of year? Once again, it's a thug. You can see how it's spreading. All we really ever have to do to it is dig it up if it's gone somewhere we don't want it. But it just is so uplifting at this time of year. This is comfrey. It spreads like mad, but you can just pull it out and put it into the compost bin and the wildlife absolutely love it. Once again, it's got early flowers for emerging pollinators. And it's actually taken over a bed where we did have ground elder. We got rid of the ground elder, we planted the comfrey, and actually I'd rather have the comfrey than the ground elder because the comfrey is so useful for wildlife and for the compost heap. This is a temporary border which will only last until about midsummer, a bit before midsummer, and it's a series of white bulbs which I've planted. Snowdrops, crocuses, and several different kinds of daffodil, which go on flowering in succession until late spring, and then I'll have to leave the grass long and not mow it in this area until about midsummer when all the leaves have died back, and then the flowers will be back next year. So it is literally the only care these bulbs need is for you not to mow that particular area until about midsummer. And they're all good spreaders apparently. Well, I chose them to be white and all good spreaders. As always goes with gardening, I can see a yellow one there, but, you know, never mind. It's a very pretty yellow. Now, those twiggy things you can just about see in amongst the bulbs are salvias. I have never yet got a salvia through the winter, but most people do. Now, one of the things I had been doing was cutting these twiggy things back before you could see the green growth coming up from the base. And a salvia expert told me you do need to leave the twigs on salvia until you can see the new growth. Obviously, if you've got a really big garden, then leaving twigs on until you see the new growth is going to be too time-consuming, but it does seem a sensible thing to do. Anyway, fingers crossed for this salvia, but I don't have any great hopes because we've had such a wet spring. So let me know how your spring is, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.